Hello and happy Engineers Week. Thanks for joining us today for our Destination MBA event, where we will speak to 3 current MBA students who have experience in engineering and are currently exploring the MBA. I'm Alex Lawrence. I'm the Dean and Director of the full-time MBA program at UCLA Anderson, including its financial aid department, and I'll be your host for today's session. Additionally, I'll provide insight on the admissions process and its perspective throughout our conversation. Before we go further, I'd like to provide a few quick housekeeping notes. We want to provide you with the opportunity to hear from us today and also get all of your questions answered. If a question comes up, post it in the comments section below, and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can during the last 15 to 20 minutes of today's session. On today's call, we have Praveen Kumar, who attends The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business, Namrata Rao, who attends the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University, and Leah Singer, who is a dual major at Syracuse University College of Engineering and Computer Science and Whitman School of Management. Thanks so much for being here to share your experiences and represent your universities. Thanks to all of you.
You're welcome.
All right, great. And I'll just put in a quick plug for myself as well. I'm a former engineer before I did get my MBA, attending Drexel University and Georgia Tech, getting a bachelor's and master's of science in electrical engineering. But we can talk a little bit more about that later. So actually, I'd like to start with you, Praveen. Will you please tell our viewers a bit about yourself?
Cool. So I hail from an eastern state in India, and my dad's a civil engineer, and there lies my inspiration for taking engineering. I graduated in 2012 from National Institute of Technology and majoring in civil engineering and joined MECON. It is an engineering consultancy under Government of India. And since 2012, I've been working in different projects from concept to commissioning in different industries such as oil and gas and metals. And there I realized the importance of project management practices, performance improvement, and to usher into areas of corporate decision making. Pursuing my MBA from Fisher College of Business, the Ohio State University. At a personal level, I love learning people, and I am PADI certified open water scuba diver. I love scuba diving. And yeah, pretty much.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And Leah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am currently in my 4th year here at Syracuse University. I'm from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And so I'm studying bioengineering here. I'm also an undergraduate student. And I first got into bioengineering because I grew up, both of my parents were doctors. So I heard a lot of the medical talk at home, but also a lot of like the dirty work, things that I didn't exactly want to get involved in. But I knew that medicine and science and engineering and problem solving really interested me. But then my sophomore year here at Syracuse, I got involved in some biology research. And that's when I realized these hard lab sciences wasn't exactly for me. And so I decided to apply to a 5-year dual degree program. So right now I'm currently still working on my bachelor's of science in bioengineering, but also working towards my MBA.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome. Namrata, please introduce yourself.
Yes. So I am a first-year student at Kelley School of Business. Alex, there is a rebound of the voice happening because.
Okay, we'll try to fix that.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm a first-year student at the Kelley School of Business. I completed my undergraduate degree in computer science in India. I started my career at Microsoft in a rotation program where I started as a computer engineer and then moved into more client-facing roles in the marketing department. Very early in my career, I realized a passion for sales and marketing, and I decided to move into a full-time role in the education space in an EdTech department as a sales and marketing engineer, as a sales and marketing manager. And then from there, I have been here at Kelley trying to grow on my marketing skills and see how that can help me to be a product marketing manager in the future.
Okay, and I want to stick with you, Namrata, and just dive into a little bit about your pre-MBA experience. What was your career before business school?
So I started as a software engineer at Microsoft. I was at Microsoft for a little over 2 years. And then before business school, I worked for 2 more years as a sales and marketing manager at Purple Squirrel Edu Ventures and then IntelliNext Ventures, which were smaller education startups.
And how did you come into that career following your undergraduate studies?
So Microsoft was on campus. Pretty much how recruiting happens in India is companies come on campus. So that was not something that I sought, but the second and the third companies were through a network that I had built, and I had aggressively sought for a career in education. So I had built that network from Microsoft.
I see. Okay, great. And Leah, talking about your experience, you're actually an undergraduate right now. At what point did you start thinking about pursuing a graduate business degree?
Right. So I always, coming into college, I had some business coursework from high school. So I knew that I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a business background, and I originally thought that was going to be in just the form of a minor, just taking a couple extra classes. But it was that biology research, that work in a lab, when I realized this wasn't really for me, and I wanted to be working in industry, and I knew that a graduate degree in business would really help guide my my passion for problem solving and business, but relating that to the medicine. So I would say my sophomore years when I realized that going down a business path, specifically with a business degree, was what I wanted.
Now, it's funny for me, your comment strikes a chord, because there was a moment for me, and I think not just all the engineers, but a lot of students, when they start figuring out what they like and what they don't like. But as an engineer in particular, what was it that you thought specifically you didn't like, or you thought that, okay, I wanted to kind of work in industry? Was it just sort of working in teams, or the lab environment? What was it?
I think it was working with cells on such a small level. I wanted to do something bigger than that, because it took so long to see progress, and just working at such a small level was not what I wanted.
Right. And did you think about other graduate programs, or were you completely sold? How did business school come across sort of your consideration?
It was really just this program that had stuck out to me since I stepped on campus. And I think in the future, I may want to pursue other graduate degrees, but this was available to me and seemed like an incredible opportunity because I was able to save 1 year rather than doing it in my MBA in 2 additional years. I'm able to complete it in just 1. So it was really the opportunity along with a change in interest.
Fantastic. Praveen, so if I can ask you some questions, talk about your undergraduate experience.
So yeah, my undergraduate experience was really phenomenal. And those were 4 years where I got my first taste of leadership, teamwork, and solving real-world problems within class as well as in industry, because we had an opportunity to do internships while we were still studying. Those undergraduate years laid the right foundation for the quantitative skills, which was the right, kind of right set of skills which are even helping me today in the business world, and also when I was working in Nikon as an MBA consultant.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Alex.
I'm sorry there. Praveen, I was sorry about that. I was asking, can you talk a little bit more about your career before business school, your time there as a project management consultant with Mekon? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Like it's the acronym for metallurgical consultants. It is a public sector funded under the government of India. So that experience started in 2012 when I joined as engineering consultant. I was working in greenfield construction site of a steel plant in eastern part of India, and then progressed through different phases of the project management, that is from concept to commissioning. I worked in planning, design, and also the execution phase. In 2015, when the steel industry was not doing great, our management decided to diversify the portfolio of the company and provide project management services to the other industry projects such as oil and gas, which was quite big at that time. And I took that opportunity to be the project management consultant services for the oil and gas industry projects. And so my entire experience is bucket of capital projects in diverse industries, metals and oil and gas, as well as from starting of the project till the execution, as well as handing over the project to the operating people of the client.
Okay, great. And when you were thinking about graduate business school, did you ever consider a part-time MBA program versus the full-time MBA program?
So when I decided I had to take MBA, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do after my MBA and with my MBA. And the question of taking a part time didn't actually fit with my schedule because I was always traveling different days, uh, being on different project sites and my content, as well as I wanted to immerse myself into a more into a complete experience of MBA rather than taking on part time. Also, there was a need requirement on my end to go global and to experience a more global culture altogether. So for me, the full-time MBA was kind of a natural conclusion or a natural choice for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Namrata, I want to ask you, how did your engineering experience help you stand out as a business school applicant?
So for me, I think the analytical and quantitative skills that an engineering background gives you was super helpful in the first semester, which is the core. Apart from that, I think seeing problems in a very data-driven way, a data-driven decision that where business problems, I could see my engineering background helping me there. Yes, there were certain skills that I had to learn for people management that we don't really get to do as being computer engineers. But using data and backing everything that we recommended with data was something I saw I could do just because I knew how much important the fundamentals in engineering are and how that helped me with my business.
Oh, great. And, you know, I sort of just jumped right into aspects of applying to business school. And I'm going to be asking you sort of all three of you a similar question. But just even taking a step back, I think for anybody who's considering graduate business school, some things to consider is that the process to applying to any graduate program is pretty unique. They all typically are going to require a standardized test that you would have to take. For example, with the MBA, one of those is the GMAT. And then, of course, you're going to be probably doing some writing. There's essays to submit. And again, depending on the program that you're looking at, you may be doing a video essay, a written essay, letters of recommendation, providing transcripts, a lot of information to collect. Amrata, I'm just going to circle back to you in particular, and thinking about applying to graduate business school, what was sort of your approach to the process? Once you decided that I'm going to go to business school, maybe you had a school already in mind, maybe you did some investigation. Can you just kind of walk us through your thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I decided that I was going to take all my time to think about this. I was not going to rush the process because it does more harm than good. So I gave my GMAT right in March and spent time just studying for it and then preparing and seeing if I had to retake the GMAT exam. And then after that, I spent a couple more months just reviewing schools based on my interest, speaking to people, speaking to current students and alums to identify that where should I be going next, considering it was a decision that I had to move to another country, how it would be. So I took as much time as I could get with, again, work being there. And I think that's one thing I recommend to everyone who goes through this process is be very structured, understand how much time you're going to take, even with recommendations, because you are harming yourself if you're going to be rushing through this. And it would just come across in your applications and your video essays and interviews that you haven't really thought this through, because it's 2 years that you're going to be investing and a lot of money. So you might as well take the time to know where you want to go.
Great. Leah, how about you? What was your approach when you decided that I'm going to be going to business school?
Right. So obviously my approach was a little bit different. I wasn't out working. I was already here at Syracuse. And so it was just kind of a transition. But, you know, I did have to get together all of that, my transcript, my recommendations. But I would say it was probably more of a natural and easy process since I am working with the same university.
So I just want to drill down into that a little bit more. So was your application process, based off of what you know, any different from, say, somebody who was working as a professional, just from the standpoint because like submitting transcripts, doing letters of recommendation, or was it pretty consistent for, as far as you know, for anybody who was either a current student or a graduate?
I would say it was pretty consistent. I still had to take the GMAT. I still had to provide all of the information and transcripts, and they were still interested in my entire background. I still had to interview and write essays, but it was just an easy transition.
How about that experience of taking the GMAT? When did you take it? Did you take it while you were still in classes, or did you have a break, like maybe the summertime that you did take it and study for it?
Right. So it was definitely difficult. I bought my first book in the summer. I was like, oh, I'm going to be so dedicated throughout the semester, and you know, things get in the way, coursework gets in the way. So it was definitely a challenge. I ended up dedicating a lot of my winter break to studying for the GMAT, which obviously was hard getting out of a tough semester. And after finals, I just had to jump right back into studying. But I definitely think it was worth studying and spending my winter break doing that.
All right, great. And just one more question about that. In terms of letters of recommendation, who did you seek out for letters of recommendation?
A lot of professors that I have had close relationships with. I had some time to realize, okay, I want to apply for this program. So I went to office hours. I built relationships with professors and faculty members through clubs and things like that. And so those are the people that were able to speak highly of me.
Okay, great. Praveen, a similar question for you about your process of when you knew that you were going to go to business school. How did you approach it?
Yeah, sure. So my first step was to take GMAT, prepare and take GMAT rather. And so that I would have enough months to prepare for the video essays, to know clearly which college to apply to, and also reach out to the alums as well as current students over those schools. And in the entire process, what I realized that the first step should be to know thyself before even applying or taking GMAT. You should be knowing who you are. And I kind of invested a lot of my time in knowing myself better, clearer, so that I could bridge the gap between what I wanted to do and where I am right now. So after taking my GMAT, I networked extensively with the existing current students in different universities in which I was kind of interested in, and then started building up my application, knowing how I should put my essays, what are my strengths, and how those strengths resonate with the strength of college as well as current students there. Moving forward in the areas of letters of recommendation, I reached out to my client, my current boss, as well as my previous boss. Those people were happy to help me with recommendation. And I would suggest the people who are applying to have enough amount of time in their hand to prepare for the letters of recommendation, because if you are requesting to someone who is higher up in the hierarchy, they wouldn't be replying the moment you want them to. They will take their time in evaluating you and writing the entire response. So there should be a phased approach in the way you apply for the entire business school and the way you take the whole matter together. It should be a phased out approach rather than doing many things at a time, break down in different phases.
That's great. Thank you. So you bring up great points, all three of you, about different aspects of applying to business school. And I see questions starting to come in, and we'll address those shortly. I'll pick out sort of the unique different answers that were provided, like, for example, with the letters of recommendation. You had Leia's experience of requesting letters of recommendation from professors. That's totally appropriate when you're a current student. As a professional who's applying to business school, the expectation is typically that we're going to be seeking a letter of recommendation from your current employer. We totally understand that that may not be possible sometimes, so it is appropriate to seek other resources, for example, a client, or perhaps a different supervisor in a previous point of employment. What you'll typically see at most business schools, candidates have graduated 2, 3, 4 years from undergrad. So reaching back or asking a professor to write a letter of recommendation may not necessarily be always the appropriate. But just like Praveen and Leia and Namrata mentioned, it's really sort of that research part about understanding the different schools, what are they asking for, and talking to different contacts, alumni, current students, professors, visiting the campus. Those are great recipes for really getting a good idea of what it takes to apply to business school. The other suggestion that I will mention is that many of the great programs have fantastic websites. Go to the websites, look at those different program elements. Some schools allow you to do a campus visit. They have student testimonials, professors, as well as alumni testimonials. So you'll get a chance to even see perhaps a sample curriculum of the first year, second year, or even the third year, depending on the program that you're looking at. So there's a lot of information out there that you can get your hands on. So take that time well in advance of doing things like taking the GMAT so that you can get a good idea what sort of types of people that the school is admitting, and looking at the class profile of even the current class. I'm going to ask each one of you a couple more questions, and then we're going to start segueing over to some of the questions that have been submitted on the chat room. And I'll go back to you, Namrata. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation sort of the experience as a student. I want to sort of drill down in that a little bit more. Can you talk about perhaps one of your favorite classes and why it was or is your favorite class?
Absolutely. So I am majoring in marketing, and I just finished a class on market-based analysis. When I was working as a sales and marketing manager, most of the things that I would do was reactive to the situations I was put in. But the business school degree, and especially this class, has made me see marketing in a very different way, and how you could justify marketing spend to the others in the company, because more often than not, you don't know where marketing goes or where do you spend the money and what's the ROI, the return on investment to it. And that has been a favorite class of mine, where we do not take our laptops. It's very textbook driven, very notes driven, where you have to write what the professor is saying. Very different to the current generation type of learning, but definitely something that I have taken away great points for my internship this summer.
So looking back on your engineering career, academic, how would you describe, say, business school classes versus the engineering classes? What sort of is your experience?
So in engineering, typically assignments, for the matter of fact, are very individual. You are supposed to solve a problem. It's more problem solving that is focused on. And in business school, the thing that I have seen is how you are working in teams. And that's the focus majorly with the team assignments that we do. Very rarely we get to do a take alone individual assignment. It's more so of how you're working with a 5-member team or a 10-member team at times. Are you the leader of the group, or are you the one who's pushing people around? Those are certain nuances that you learn in business school, which I think is great learning, because to be successful, you don't need to have the skills, but also you need to learn how to work with people, which I think is what I've got here.
Great, thank you. Leah, how about you? To date, what has been your favorite class, and how would you describe how engineering courses differ from business school courses?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite class so far has been my supply chain class. This really just opened my eyes up to a whole new aspect of the business world, and improving the flow through systems and how each business really has to deal with this in their own ways. And it also brought in a lot of my problem solving skills from engineering and solving puzzles. And it really made me think and just opened my eyes to a whole new side of businesses. And I would say, because I'm constantly multiple times per day switching back between engineering and my business coursework, it's really refreshing. It's nice to just totally change topics, but then when I come home at night, I kind of bring them both together and say, how can I apply what I'm doing in one area to another? So for example, I'm taking a supply chain course in project management, but then in my engineering classwork, I'm working on a capstone design project where we are designing something to help in the hospitals. And so I'm really applying the skills from the project management class to my capstone design project. And it's nice to see how well they integrate together.
Great, thank you. Praveen, same question for you. What was your favorite class, and how would you describe, or how are engineering courses that you've taken differ from the business school courses?
My favorite class is the strategy class, which I'm taking right now. Is one of the best experience that I ever had in MBA, because of 3 reasons. First, the strategy class kind of ties each of our coursework together into a whole case study mode. And that is very helpful in understanding how different parts of supply chain, data visualization, or accounting and finance ties together in the real world scenario. Second reason is that we get to see a lot of industry. Not 2 cases are like focused on same industry. So we are seeing industries from like bottlers to like pharmaceuticals to agricultural. So there is a plethora of industry to look at that gives us depth as well as breadth of our education. Third, the way the class is conducted is very Socratic mode of studying, where everyone participates. You have participation points, no final exam. So in that, what happens, the entire class is participating like a board meeting. That is some kind of preparation for the real world meetings, or the real world scenario that we are going to take in our near future. And how this all differs from engineering is very interesting. First, because in engineering, as Namrata mentioned, we used to have individual homeworks and assignments. And here it's not about doing the things right, but it's about how you are doing the things. It's not how you are reaching out to a solution in a very fast manner or a very efficient manner, but it's how you're getting to the solution. And there is another element of EQ added to the IQ in the entire mode of studies. So MBA studies is more kind of opening your brain, or you're opening your sight in different direction, giving you a 360-degree of vision, where engineering is about doing it, reaching to the right solution, doing it fast, and that's where engineering is mostly focused at. So there is a stark difference.
Oh, great, thank you. My own 2 cents I would throw in, I know it's been some time since I was in engineering courses, and graduate business school courses, but I think one of a big major difference, and all of you sort of commented on this, is that In many business classes, business courses, there are case studies. And what a case study is, a few smaller schools, so to speak, a smaller set of schools do this analysis of a situation at a particular firm and in a point of time, and they've come across this challenge. And at the end of every case, there's sort of this question about essentially what would you do? And the best courses will have teams of students address this particular issue. So it might be something around, how do you market the Prius? And, this dates back many decades ago. So Toyota had to address that. I remember sitting in a strategy course, and the case was about 3M. And I used to work at 3M before business school. I think the best professors call on those students who have some kind of background with the company or something in their work experience that relates to the case. So in that particular case, professor did call on me to sort of talk about my experiences working at 3M. Now, granted, I couldn't talk about all aspects of 3M. It's a huge company. But I think what's the most interesting aspects of looking at casework is getting a chance to understand what is the industry, what is the company, how is the company providing some type of service or product that's going to be sort of revolutionary. And then again, at the end, there's sort of a character or the company comes to a dilemma in terms of how how they're going to solve a business challenge. So I thought that was unique because you're working in diverse teams. Engineering classes, I think, obviously, because it's a little bit more of a narrow set of experiences, because everybody has some, whether it's a particular major, there may be a little bit of cross team work, but that's sort of like one of the major things. And of course, not all classes are about casework. You have other courses that have a different style. But I think what you heard from all the three panelists that we have here today is sort of like definitely a unique liking for both sets, but definitely the graduate business school experience in the classroom is definitely unique. I said I was only going to ask two, but I do have one final question for the panelists from me. But before I turn it over to what I see in the chat room, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to our audience, many of them still currently in school, as they are, for obvious reasons, and that's why they're participating in this webinar, as they are starting to think about possibly going to graduate business school. So I'm going to start with you, Praveen. I'll go back to you. What would be one piece of advice to the audience that you would give?
Sure. So my piece of advice to everyone who is trying to take MBA would be to learn to articulate your thoughts and your whatever you want to deliver in a very linear, clear, as well as concise way, because you cannot be all over the place when you are trying to put your thought across.
All right, great. How about you, Leah?
Yeah, so my advice would just be to get out there and get some work experience before pursuing that graduate business degree. That's not something I did because I was presented with this incredible opportunity, but I definitely see the advantage in doing that. And I see how these people that do have multiple years of work experience are bringing in these extraordinary perspectives that I just don't have, and I'm able to learn from them. But I think if I were to do it again, it would be really advantageous to have had work experience.
All right, great. Namrata?
So it goes back to what Praveen said, that know thyself. I think that's the one key differentiator between candidates that succeed in business school is they know their strengths and weaknesses. So when you're applying, know who you are, and also assess the school as much as they're assessing you. We get into this whole rigor of just trying to impress during the interview, but take some time to see where you would be a great fit, because every business school has great programs, but you as a fit is important as well.
Great. And what I would add to that, especially if you're still in school now, as the admissions director, I would say focus on getting good grades. That's sort of like you're in that moment if you're still taking courses, because I'm sure that all three of our panelists would agree that especially the fact that you can't go back and take classes over. You don't want to do that if at all possible. But the best programs in terms of the admissions policies, it is a holistic process. We talked about a lot of the elements already: grades, standardized tests like the GMAT, also letters of recommendation, et cetera. When you go to actually apply for graduate business school, the last thing you want to do is, when you look at your transcript and if your GPA may not be, say, competitive enough, is to go back and try to retake classes, especially if you're working or have some other activity. So in the moment right now, get good grades. I would also encourage you to sort of follow your passion. For many people, they won't be applying to business school for another 3 years, maybe 2-3 years. If they're still in school, follow your passion. Right now, there's a lot of great opportunities. I was doing some homework for today's session, and one of the data points I read was that anybody who has or does get an engineering degree out of undergrad, it's one of the most high potential degrees of all that are given to colleges, and not just necessarily focusing on the monetary value, but those who come out with some technical skills are very much sought after. But then when you start thinking about graduate degree, it's probably going to be one of the last, or probably the last time that you'll actually go back to school, unless you go get a PhD or a second degree. So it's like really making sure that it is the right degree for you and what you ultimately want to do. So looking at the questions that are coming in, and I definitely encourage all of you to use the chat feature and submit your questions. Somebody asked that she just graduated with a degree in civil engineering and is considering getting a master's in civil engineering. What does an MBA provide versus getting a graduate degree in engineering? Even though our panelists may not have sort of pursued that particular route of getting a master's degree in engineering, I'd love to hear their thoughts in general. Maybe they did come across that sort of consideration and why they didn't personally choose it. For me, as I mentioned, I got a master's in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech. At the time, MBA didn't even come across my desk. I didn't even know what an MBA was. I was graduating from undergrad, and I saw it as an opportunity to get another master's degree quickly, since I can go right after undergrad. And I, again, pursued that option. But what I will say, and then I'll turn it over to Namrata, I'll start with you. But the other thing that I'll mention is that an MBA degree is very flexible. You'll find that many people who do pursue an MBA, they may be career switchers. So, and then even post MBA, they'll probably go on to a second career or even a third career. I didn't do a very good job of showcasing my own profile, but I did management consulting for 5 years after business school. And then now I'm here in higher ed over the past 13 years. So that's my story. Namrata, I'd love to hear your thoughts on pursuing a graduate degree in engineering versus an MBA.
Yes, I think most of us would have had this dilemma at some point of time, whether to just continue on the path that we have had an undergrad degree in. I see the main differentiation as, if you are someone who has loved the industry, loved your role as a civil engineer, and want to grow in that career, the master's degree would make sense. But if you are, like Alex mentioned, a career switcher, and that can be a function switcher, like from engineering to marketing, or an industry switcher, like from technology to healthcare, an MBA degree would make more sense to you at that point of time. And I see that as the main differentiation for me.
How about you, Leah? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would definitely say just follow your passion. If you can see yourself continuing to advance in civil engineering or whatever industry you're in, then that would be what would suit you best. But if you're thinking even just a little bit of a diversion from the path you're currently on, then it might be nice to see some new perspectives and get some different coursework under your belt.
How about you, Praveen? Any thoughts in terms of like maybe looking at an engineering graduate degree versus an MBA?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to do a master's in civil engineering, I would recommend to have some amount of work experience before you take that big decision to delve deeper into one industry. Because if you're not seeing a wide array of options, you might make a choice which would not be a very great choice to make at that moment. So anyone who is trying to juggle between these options should get into industry, whatever industry they want to get into, and have a breadth of experience of how a company works, how the functions are aligned, and how and what clicks them. Like you should know, like as I mentioned earlier, like know thyself. You should know what really makes you feel happy and like which clicks with you. Is it solving problems, quantitative problems, or seeing things in a different perspective? So once you know that, you'll be able to make more informed decision. So there shouldn't be any haste in getting a degree as soon as possible, but there should be more a kind of calculated approach to whether should I take, should I not, and let's see how things are in the real world before making such decision.
Great. All three of you talked about opportunities and passion there. I'm somewhat jealous a little bit about for current MBA students about those type of opportunities. I'm not jealous about taking exams and quizzes and homework, but I will say this, that when I look at what our students at UCLA Anderson have available to them and a lot of great programs like the one you are all enrolled in, is companies like Amazon, Google, in the technology space, management consulting firms like Bain, McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, to name a few. And then, of course, on the finance side, many of the banks like BAML, Goldman Sachs, et cetera, in the career opportunities there. The reason why I mention those, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, because if not you, maybe just thinking about your peers, thinking about those companies, they're looking for people with backgrounds who have an analytical mindset behind them, who can run the numbers per se. My experience is that I've seen a lot of companies look very thoroughly at engineers, but would love to sort of hear about whether it be your experiences or maybe your observations of the summer internships or full-time employment offers that your classmates or classes that graduated before you have come across. Namrata, I'm going to start with you again. Maybe again, I know it's a long question, but just observations about career opportunities for engineers coming out of with that type of background, if not your own.
Yes, I think going back to one of the things that you mentioned about students who are pursuing their engineering degree to focus on getting the good grades, I think engineering gives you a very sound base on which you can then either get into finance or management consulting or even marketing per se. That base really helps you to build on. And I have seen, as a matter of fact, my classmates this year who have engineering backgrounds but have been able to make a switch to healthcare, have been able to make a switch to finance, just because they've spent 4 years or more just understanding data-driven decisions that we did in our undergrad degree. And that really differentiates them as a candidate because they are not from a traditional undergrad business degree, but have had a different life or a different work style before moving here.
Great. Leah, maybe can you describe what you may have seen, maybe classes ahead of you in terms of summer internship opportunities, or what kind of companies that you've seen come on your campus?
Yeah, so I definitely think I bring a different background than a lot of my peers that are applying to these same summer internships as me, and it's been really helpful. I think I'm getting a lot of positive feedback, and with the MBA background, I'm able to get a more diverse group of companies that I want to apply to and that are interested in me compared to my other peers that have more of a straightforward path, either in just engineering or just business. So it's nice that my interests can range a little bit for a summer internship, and then the types of companies that are interested in me, there's also some variation. So in the end, it'll just give me more options to follow what I really want to do.
Praveen, maybe for you, what is maybe a unique company or opportunity that's come at your campus that you may have considered or you heard one of your classmates pursuing, whether it be a particular company or a particular type of role, job, responsibility?
Sure. So there have been a lot of opportunities, right from the consulting to the different entrepreneurial like endeavors. And recently I learned that one of my classmates have got an opportunity to work under a venture capitalist firm as an associate for their summer internship. That was something really interesting, provided that person has never worked in that area before. It was just with his right qualitative skills and the way they presented themselves, they could make into that big domain of venture capitalist forum. And regarding the kind of firms which is visiting MBA institutes and especially the Fisher College of Business, we have consulting, tech firms, traditional operations firm, logistics firm. So we are more operation focused. So we attract a lot many companies related to operations, as well as the consulting roles or around program management, as well as supply chain consulting. So this is where engineering helps you, because you've been doing those kind of stuff like data-driven decisions, as Narmata mentioned, and putting data into a right context and then see the problem with a different mindset altogether. So these kind of skills, if someone picks up early in their engineering, it will show good results when you are actually recruiting 5 years or 3 years down the line during your MBA.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and I was just when you mentioned supply chain, and I've just been watching how a company like Amazon is just gobbling up a lot of MBAs. Of course, they haven't announced where their next headquarters is going to be, but I can tell you, just looking at MBAs, not just only at UCLA Anderson, but at other schools, Amazon is looking for that talent that has that technical background coupled with an MBA as well. Here's a question about taking the GMAT. What materials, books did you use? What would you recommend in preparation for the GMAT? And then how much time did it take? Just give you all sort of like maybe a few seconds here to think about, and then I'll start with you, Leah. Is that my own experience is it took me a year because once I started seeing like, oh, what the test was, I wasn't always the best student to just roll out of bed without studying. So it took me about a year just to sort of prep, and I was working at the time too. So I was trying to mix in travel and studying, and just to say this new test format that is now where it's computer. I always advise people at least taking a year. But again, going back to you, Leah, what was sort of what's your recommendation on the timeline and then on books, materials that you used?
So I definitely don't believe I did the studying, the preparation correctly. I would have dedicated a lot more time to it. I definitely didn't dedicate as much time in retrospect. But what I wish I had done more of is narrowing in on my strengths and weaknesses. I kind of just did a lot of practice problems, and that wasn't as helpful. But had I, known what I really needed to focus on, going back to those answers and categorizing the problems that I needed work on would have helped me a lot in retrospect.
How about you, Praveen?
Sure. So my GMAT preparation took me around 3 to 5 months. And what the kind of resources on which I banked upon were primary GMAT materials, which is available on the GMAT MBA.com site, that is GMAT site. And the method which I would suggest people to use to ace up GMAT is to break down your study time, or you segment your study time between weekend and weekdays. During weekend, you try, since you're working, like assuming that you're working, you will have lesser amount of time or lesser energy to actually practice cases and practice questions in 4-hour time slot. So try to learn new concepts during those and practice small bunch of questions and repeat them. And when weekend comes, dedicate the whole lot of your day in taking a real mock test and trying to analyze the results of those mock tests for the other part of your day and the weekend. Because it's not just about your studying and taking tests. If you're not actually interpreting and analyzing your results, you're not doing good justice to your preparation. You have to plug in the holes which you have in your like preparation. Second method which I would suggest is not taking so many things at a time. If you are working, try to, like I use the technique of rising up early. Like I used to study from 5 to 8 a.m. and then I would go to work and like then do the entire office stuff and come back home and take an early sleep. So this is how you should segment your time to in your daily life. Like if you're trying to do so many things at a time, you'll probably clog yourself and burn out yourself, and there goes your motivation and everything. So that is how you should manage your time and try to segment the time. People will learn it on fly, I guess. I learned it too.
All right, great. How about you, Namrata?
So I took the GMAT twice because the first time I really rushed through the process, gave myself a deadline of, okay, this was the date I was going to give it, and prepared for it. Really didn't do well in that kind of setting. So the next time I decided to follow a structure and spend a lot more time on seeing why I was doing my questions wrong. Use the same material that Praveen mentioned, the MBA website, as well as a couple of online courses that I took. And then when I felt that I had prepared enough was when I went and I booked the date. So I did both the sides of, first booking the date and then studying, and then the other way around. The second one kind of worked for me well. So see how you function, because if you're going to be tensed about the date, then it's not going to do well for you on the exam date.
Wonderful. I'm looking at the time, and we probably have time for maybe one more questions. Let me check. Actually, we have no additional questions. Well, okay, that's good because the timing is perfect. I want to thank all of the panelists for joining us today, as well as you, all of you attendees. Again, put in my own 2 cents about the MBA degree. I think it's a fantastic option for many to consider, especially engineers. There's a lot of different opportunities on the career side. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, but even when you had that entrepreneurial idea, whether it be technical or not, I think engineers are spectacular at approaching problems, going about solving them, bringing them to market. You've heard a lot of great advice in terms of how to best apply for graduate business school, as well as the different options that are out there, part-time, full-time, doing it as a dual degree. I highly encourage you to visit the website and learn more about the GMAT, as well as what the business school experience is going forward. So again, thank you, Praveen, Namrata, and Leah for joining us today. Have a wonderful day. And for all of you out there, please stay in touch. And, oh, wait a minute. I think there's one more question. We have one more question. Let me look. I think we have a couple minutes. Oh, there's a question about what were your target GMAT score? So let me ask you, Praveen, did you have a target GMAT score?
Yeah, sure. When you start your preparation, you know where you can go. Like, let me back up a minute. So before you take GMAT and before you do anything, you should know why you are doing all this stuff, right? So where you want to end up, you want to be in consulting, you want to be in tech firm. So your decision or your GMAT score should be driven back, should be like a backward slip of your decision. So you should know where you want to go after MBA. Then you have to know which colleges are like right college fit for that kind of role. And then you should decide what is the GMAT required to get into that college. So it's very personal decision, like target GMAT score. So I would suggest the kind of model which I just mentioned, like drill down from the end result towards your present and know what is the kind of GMAT that you need to usher into the kind of career and why you need to take that.
Okay. How about you, Namrata? Did you have a target GMAT score or range that you were looking at the time?
Yes. And again, I think it goes back to what Praveen said, that you need to identify the schools that you are applying to. And my personal target was getting a 700 plus, just because I was an international student and just understanding the realm of things for us, I had a target score, but it was based on the research that I had done.
Great, thank you. Leah, did you have one?
Well, not exactly. I knew that I had to reach the goals, the target range of the scores that Syracuse had, and so I tried to get that score. But I knew that if that didn't work out, then I would pick a more traditional MBA path and go out and work. So I guess my GMAT goal was the score range at Syracuse University.
Okay, great. Yeah, now I would just echo that you heard between all three responses is really when it comes time to apply, look at the schools that you are considering. Many of them actually highlight on their website a class profile, which will show a GMAT range typically and the mean GMAT of the most recent class. So you go to UCLA Anderson's website today, you'll see the class of 2019, the class profile. Again, having a target GMAT score is great. Keep in mind that all schools admit people in a range of different scores, and they may even admit people with lower than that range score or even deny people outside of that range score. So it's just one part of sort of the application, but you definitely want to excel and do the best you possibly can on any standardized test like the GMAT. And so having a target score, can be good, but just being mindful of your consideration set of the schools that you're applying to. So there are no more questions at this time. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.